let's talk about saves plus holds, or just holds in general, because they have grown wildly in popularity in fantasy leagues every year, or even today when I tweeted out this relief pitcher preview. We got some responses. Hey, make sure you talk about holds. So people are excited about it. And I do think it's interesting for fantasy because instead of worrying about role, you can legitimately just draft the most skilled relievers, right? Because, even whatever, any type of reliever, if he's pitching the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, they're going to wind up with either a hold or a save, most likely, if they're pitching on a good team. So with that being said, what is your strategy in this format? Scott, we'll start with you. Saves plus holds.
My strategy in this format, sort of like with head-to-head points, is wait until the very end of the draft to take all my relievers. Because the saves leaders tend to have more saves than the hold leaders have holds. If you're talking about a standard roto lineup, 9 pitcher spots to fill. If you are going to go that route and just wait until the very end to take all your relievers, you probably need to get 3 of them to be competitive. You can't just settle for 2. But there are so many options that's not hard to do. There are, unless you play in an extremely deep league, like an AL or NL only format, there are always going to be hold sources out there that are worth picking up. So it just isn't worth the investment to pay up for one unless they're heavily discounted.
I think that's totally fine. And, I think it's not really a cheat code. It's pretty obvious, but just draft great relievers on great teams, right? Those are the ones that win the most games. They're going to wind up with the most
cheap.
holds, the most,
as long as they're cheap. That's the point I'd stress most of all.
And people wanted to hear about the top holds leaders from last year. So Hector Neris, who was on the Astros, no longer. He signed with the Cubs this offseason. Should probably still work into either a good amount of holds or saves. We'll get to that in a bit. Yennier Cano with the Orioles, Tyler Rogers with the Giants, Eric Swanson with the Blue Jays, Jason Foley with the Tigers, Mark Leiter Jr. with the Cubs, and Trevor Stephan with the Guardians. I think some names to target this year in hold leagues: Ryan Presley and Brian Abreu. Obviously, the Astros are going to win lots of games, and they're going to have one of the best bullpens in all of baseball. Matt Brash with the Mariners, AJ Minter with the Braves, Jason Adam with Tampa Bay, Brusdar Graterol with the Dodgers. Kind of unique because he doesn't get strikeouts, but he does have good ratios and obviously pitches for one of the best teams in baseball. Chris, anything you wanted to add on holds or saves plus holds?
No, I would just, I think it's worth keeping in mind what you said, which is that the saves leaders tend to get a lot more saves than the holds leaders. So when you look at like the top 20 in saves plus holds last season, you had Tyler Rogers, Mark Leiter, Eric Swanson, Hector Neris. Those were the only ones. So those 4 were the only ones in the top 20 of saves plus holds who had fewer than 5 saves. And then Yennier Cano and Jason Foley were the only ones who had fewer than 10 on top of that. So it's still the best saves plus holds guys are still going to mostly look like the best closers, often because most teams still do use their best reliever as their closer. It's pretty rare. Like, you can argue Brian Abreu is the best closer or the best relief pitcher on the Houston Astros. He's not their closer. He's probably number 3.
You could have made that argument.
I said you can argue it.
Okay.
He's really, really good.
I mean, they got this Josh Hader guy now, Chris.
That guy's really good too, but like, all right, I'm a big Brian Abreu fan. I just want to point out
he's really good.
1.84 ERA, 188 strikeouts over the past 2 seasons. That's a good bit better than Josh Hader over the past 2 seasons. That's all I'm saying. He's really good. He might be their best reliever. He's probably 3rd in line for saves.
Something else that you'll see with holds is that there's not as many on the top end. There was only 3 with 30 plus, but there is more just kind of jumbled together with 20 plus. So there was 28 relievers with 20 plus holds last year. Remember that there was only 23 with 20 plus saves. So
multiple pitchers can get a hold in a given game. Only one can get a save. They don't always get saves.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's not a perfect science, believe me. But again, I would say try to target the best pitchers on the best teams, and you should be all right.
And I have to say, as somebody who is resistant to the idea of going from saves to saves plus holds. Now that I have a
Best.
little more experience with it, I enjoy it.
It's so much better.
Enjoy making no investment in relievers and just watching everybody else make an investment and knowing I can get an edge on them that way.
Well, it's also just like, it's nice to reward the best pitchers and not just the guys who pitch in one specific role.
Yeah.
You know, like
We
it's
don't
a
need
little
Rockies closers.
And it
man.
never,
it's a
you never
little
feel
like I don't have to, in a saves plus holds league, I don't have to care about bad closers.
Yep.
Which is the
That is
worst
nice.
thing about fantasy baseball.
I also like that it never feels hopeless. You know, that it never feels like
Mhm.
you're in a feudal situation where you just have to throw a bunch of fab dollars and hope you get lucky that the guy who got the save on Friday ends up being the closer.
Yeah.
There's always plenty of hold guys out there. So I think I certainly can make an intellectual argument for pure saves leagues being better because, let's face it, relief pitchers aren't that valuable if not for that save scarcity.
Mhm.
That's why I'm saying wait until the end to take yours in saves plus holds leagues. So from like a game construction standpoint, saves probably does make more sense as a category than saves plus holds, but I don't know. I just kind of enjoyed playing.
We spent so much time last year on the freaking Diamondbacks bullpen when none of those guys before they traded for Paul Sewald were any good and had any business being on fantasy rosters. And in a saves plus holds league, you just didn't have to worry about any of them.
Yeah.
It's great. You don't have to sweat out, oh God, is Trevor May, he's not pitching anymore, but is Trevor May going to destroy my ratios? Like, SHOLDS forever.
Hey man, shout out to Trevor May. He had 15 saves in the second half.
Oh, he was. I made a
winner.
big charge in my big roto league because of him, but it never felt good having him in my lineup.